In today's brief video, I'm going to take some time and talk about cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome, a condition that I once suffered from when I was struggling with THC addiction. In today's video, I'm going to cover two parts of this syndrome. I'm going to first discuss one of the most challenging things that I think people with CHS face, and then I'm going to talk about some of the medications that they use in an acute emergency room setting if you do wind up going to the hospital. And guys, I'm taking this right out of the Journal of Emergency Medicine, volume 54, issue number 3, when it comes to the medications that you can expect to be administered if you're admitted to a hospital with CHS. If you're new to the channel, my name's Dr. Frank. I'm the founder of AddictionMindset recovery coaching programs that focus on helping people quit nicotine, THC, energy drinks, and adult media content, drugs that I once personally struggled with. I think one of the hardest struggles for people who suffer from cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome isn't necessarily the nausea, the vomiting, the muscle pain, the migraines, the headaches, the bowel issues, all of that, although it's horrible. I think one of the hardest or most challenging things is the fact that the person is now essentially forced to quit using cannabis. And I think because that's the only cure for CHS, that's the only cure. And I think for many users, especially if addiction and dependence is present, it's shocking. And it's very, very hard for that person to just flip a switch in some cases, going from constant cannabis use to nothing. And I just want to say really quickly to those of you who are struggling with this, who have been hit with that sticker shock, the realization that you might have to quit using cannabis forever. I want to challenge you to look at this as an opportunity to start to pursue other things in your life, because being sober from cannabis, quitting smoking weed for me was truthfully one of the best decisions I ever made. And I don't know that I would have made that decision if I wasn't starting to get the nausea, if I didn't start to piece together all of the horrible things that were going wrong in my life because of my cannabis use. So I really want you guys to hopefully reframe your mindsets and take this as an opportunity to get better and potentially really excel in areas of your life that perhaps cannabis was holding you back. I know for me personally, there were many areas of my life that it turned out cannabis wasn't helping me, although I thought it was. And by quitting, it was one of the best things that ever happened to me. And there's a chance that if you have CHS, this might be a blessing in disguise, even though it completely feels like hell on earth. If you do wind up going to the emergency room, and some people will have to go, right? If you've been vomiting 10, 20 times a day, having diarrhea, and you're facing severe dehydration, I would encourage you to go to the emergency room, because dehydration can lead to kidney failure. It can lead to serious cardiac complications in your heart due to electrolyte imbalances. And you want to get a complete workup too of your gastrointestinal system, because if you've been vomiting a lot, you might be suffering from gastritis or esophagitis, inflammation throughout the GI tract. We've also seen a lot of people who have CHS getting diagnosed or were previously diagnosed with symptoms of SIBO or small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. We just talked to someone recently who also had a fungal type infection within their GI system. And real quick, before I talk about the medications, I want to say a theory on why that might happen. Cannabis is known to slow down gastric motility, so the rate at which foods and things move throughout your GI system. And one of the theories is if there was fungus contamination or bacterial contamination within your gut pre-existing, or if you experienced fungal contamination from cannabis, the thought is that bacteria and that fungus isn't moving through your GI system properly, so you're getting backed up with fungus and bacteria, and the cannabis continues to slow down that rate of gastric motility. That might be one of the reasons why these comorbidities or these other conditions exist in people who have cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome. And then, of course, I talked about the inflammation from vomiting and what that can do to your esophagus and stuff like that. So, anyways, if you go to the hospital and you're admitted, don't be offended if the doctors don't take you seriously or they're kind of jerks about it. There's not a lot of awareness out there about this condition. And you guys got to remember, a lot of physicians, a lot of nurses, they are cannabis users, a lot of people. And if you're coming in with a condition due to cannabis and that person is a strong proponent of cannabis, even though they're not going to tell you that, there might be some bias towards you and some judgment towards you. So just brush it off your shoulders. The most important thing I think for people to get, and this is not medical advice, this is just my opinion, and this is based off of this peer-reviewed article, okay, out of the Journal of Emergency Medicine, is electrolyte rehydration. Very, very important. And chances are they're going to hook you up to IVs and they're going to provide you with electrolytes to help you rehydrate. And this is so important from preventing kidney dysfunction or kidney failure and potentially cardiac complications as well, too. Now, when it comes to medications that they're going to give you, it's usually a combination, or the recommendation here is anti-vomiting medications and antipsychotic medications or sedative medications. And I'm not saying this is good. I'm not saying this is bad. This is just what you can expect when you go to the emergency room. Some of these medications include, one of the most common ones I see on forums, on Reddit and Facebook groups, as haloperidol. This is used to treat certain types of mental disorders, specifically schizophrenia. It also controls symptoms of Tourette's syndrome. But this is also, it rebalances dopamine levels, and how its impact, the impact that it has on dopamine, makes it an antiemetic, so an anti-vomiting type medication. So this is something that you may see prescribed. The other one, oh man, this is hard to pronounce. Phenothiazine. This is an antipsychotic and antiemetic medication, so an anti-vomiting medication. It's usually used for anxiety, schizophrenia, treating nausea and vomiting. This goes under the name Zofran. Another thing that people will commonly be described is Xanax, or medications from the benzodiazepine family. Again, talking about sedatives. My opinion, this is not medical advice on this. And at the hospital too, they may also administer a hot shower or hot bath. If you can ask for that, get that while you're there. And they may also be able to provide you with capsaicin cream, okay? Somewhere, from what I'm understanding, somewhere placed on the back of the neck, between the neck and the mid-back, might be one of your best spots for it because of cannabis's impact on the HPTA axis, which can regulate nausea and stuff like that. Anyways, when it comes to these medications, yeah, it's probably just short-term use, so I don't think you're going to experience many side effects. Something that I think would be unfortunate, though, is if someone's going in with these symptoms, they're prescribed benzodiazepines for long-term treatment, and this is someone who wasn't on Xanax prior. Now they get off cannabis, but now they wind up with a Xanax addiction. I think we just have to be really, really cautious with that, and I just want you guys to be aware of those things. I would also argue that your body is trying so hard to detox. So if the vomiting gets controlled after a little bit and you don't need these things, maybe don't jump on them. But of course, if you're vomiting like nonstop and you're getting continually dehydrated, well, yeah, then you're going to need some of these medications. What the literature shows is that oftentimes the anti-vomiting medications aren't enough. They usually need to add into it some type of sedative or dopamine antagonist-based medication to help control symptoms successfully in the ER setting. The only cure is ceasing to use cannabis products, okay? And sometimes people will quit and they'll get CHS flare-ups 20 days, 30 days, 40 days after quitting cannabis. Not as bad as they were in the beginning, but these flare-ups will continue to happen. So I don't want you to quit and then get a flare up 5 or 10 days later and be like, oh, it wasn't cannabis because I stopped smoking 5 days ago and I'm still vomiting. What they're showing, or one of the hypotheses behind this syndrome, is that stress, both psychological and certainly physiological, especially in the presence of fasting, which creates more physiological stress on the body, seems to create a lipolysis response. This is a breakdown of your cellular fat, which might re-release THC into your system. And if you know about cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome, oftentimes eating is very challenging. So a lot of these patients go into a state of malnutrition or starvation, which leads to the breakdown of fat, especially if they're exercising during this time, right? It's like an unintentional fast. Here's this massive amount of stress on the body, and boom, fat breaks down, THC is released, and there's a flare up of CHS. So we do encourage you guys to try your best to eat foods. I'm going to have several more videos on nutrition regarding CHS, but in the beginning, I think if you can focus on things that are light and easy to digest, fruits, you might want to lean away from vegetables. Some of those can be kind of hard to digest, but I think fruits are an excellent option. Blueberries, strawberries, raspberries, pineapple, watermelon, stuff like that seems to go well. Carbohydrates, if you can eat toast or something like that, or white rice, think plain Jane, plain Jane. If you can get butter on it, like a grass-fed butter, that is a very healthy source of fat. Like if you put that on white rice or on a piece of like whole grain toast, if you can tolerate that. I'm certainly a fan of meat, but a lot of times people can't really tolerate heavy meats in the early stages of CHS. So perhaps like a protein shake in oat milk or almond milk, unflavored, will work for you. And that will help to replenish your protein levels as well too, right? You want to focus on getting healthy proteins, healthy fats, healthy sources of carbohydrates when you're trying to eat, to prevent yourself from going into starvation and potentially flaring up a CHS episode. And I think this is fascinating because when I got my CHS symptoms, I was fairly avid in the gym. My health was declining to a rate at which it was hard for me to work out, but I was still trying, and I wasn't eating a lot, and I was like fasting somewhat intentionally, somewhat unintentionally, because I just felt too nauseous to eat in the morning. And I am starting to worry about people who use cannabis in the fitness industry, because I can't help but to wonder if they do a really intense workout or run a marathon and then they start fasting, is that going to create a lot of stress on the body, a lot of breakdown of muscle tissue and fat tissue? Is that going to release THC and predispose them to a CHS episode, especially because people who are real intense into fitness also tend to have some degrees of generalized anxiety or anxiety disorders, things like that are also comorbidities for CHS. I linked a support group in the video description below on Facebook. I linked a Reddit thread for CHS, and I linked my other videos here at Addiction Mindset for CHS. If you need help with this or you have questions, please contact our offices, set up a coaching consultation. You can find that information in the pinned comment to this video. So I'll see you guys in the video description and the pinned comment.